You know, we hear from many people that the economy is on the upswing, but there are others who say there is no recovery in sight. Now, Charles Munger, one of Warren Buffett's closest partners, is emphasizing what some have believed for months. Joining me now from our New York studio is Joe Weisenthal, deputy editor of the online publication Business Insider. Hey there, you know, Warren Buffett is one of the most successful investors in the world, and one of his closest business partners recently said the economy will never recover. How bold of a statement is this?
It's pretty bold. I mean, one of the interesting things about it is that Warren Buffett himself tends to be pretty optimistic about the United States. He recently made a big railway bet in the acquisition of Burlington Northern, which he explicitly described as a bet on the future of America. He's always kind of been a skeptic and a little bit of a moralist, but he doesn't typically come off as doom and gloom. So the fact that his partner, longtime partner, Charlie Munger, wrote this piece, and the subtitle of which I think was just basically "America is finished" or something like that, is pretty surprising and should be interesting to all investors, and especially Berkshire Hathaway's investors.
And it was pretty interesting the way it was written. It was kind of, an idea sort of in the clouds, as if America was basic land and it started off as paradise, but then some people made some mistakes, and then it just really turned into a gloomy scenario. I'm not sure how much of the piece you...
Right.
Are you familiar with the piece?
Yeah, it was written as a parable. It didn't explicitly say it was about the United States, though obviously it was, and it was about a country that was founded on the idea of hard work and people didn't go into debt, and the economy prospered and grew rapidly up until the point that Wall Street finance took over and turned the economy into a casino, and the economy grew massively in debt. And the way it ends in Munger's tale is oil prices spike, our exports collapse, we can no longer finance our deficit, and basically at that point the nation is finished. So I suppose what this isn't is a description of what's going to happen in the economy in the short run. He's not saying, oh, we're finished right now or we're finished next year. And in fact, investors hopeful for a rebound may still get that, but he sees the long-term story, or probably the medium-term story, is already written. There's nothing we can do about it, and perhaps we're doomed.
So with stories like that, especially from people pretty respectable, pretty successful, pretty high up, do you think, I mean, in your opinion, from your research, is there anything that the country can do now to make it so that this tall tale doesn't come true?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, some people think that it's basically written into stone that we have so much debt that the country has to take out so much debt just to keep the current standard of living as it is, that there's really no way we'll ever be able to pay it off, and that with demographics and the entitlement crisis, we're doomed. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, the thing is about calling for doom is that people call for doom all the time, through the history of punditry and prognostication and writing. People have been predicting the end. So I don't know, but I think what's interesting is that unlike other recoveries, it's incredibly uneasy, and you have lots of folks right now all basically saying the same thing, that this recovery is a mirage, and that we still have this very severe underlying crisis that's about to unfold.
I mean, I think that's an interesting point you raise when there's always that effect of, oh, things were always better back in the old days. But looking historically, I mean, we have been in this position before. The United States has been in some pretty terrible recessions, not only the stock market crash of the late 20s, but also, every decade there seems to be something. But
right.
Then there's a recovery.
No, Exactly. People thought we were doomed in the early 80s. That was considered to be the end of American prosperity, and then we went on to what was almost an amazing 2-decade bull run in the markets. Now, granted, that was a little different, actually, because in the early 80s, we were still dealing with very high inflation and low debt. Now we have the opposite, high interest rates and low debt. Now we have the opposite, very low interest rates and high debt, and those interest rates are going to have to come up, which will be a drag on the recovery. However, the broader idea that there are times when people assume that we're doomed and we bounce back bigger than anyone could have possibly foreseen at the time remains intact. And again, not just the 80s, but through various times in U.S. history, things look very bleak and things recover. What we don't know is how we're going to come back. So it's one thing to say we always come back and we always recover, but very few people have a very clear vision for what that will look like, what industries will create the jobs that people need.
And certainly other people have no vision for what it will look like. Well, thanks so much, Joe Weisenthal, for that analysis.